Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's call with LNI's Acting Secretary Jennifer Berrier, Representative Scott Conklin, and Center County Pastor Craig Rose, a member of Central PA United or PA United, who will be calling for an increase in the state's minimum wage. I'm Teresa, Deputy Communications Director for LNI. Before we get started with opening remarks, I'd like to provide you with a few quick reminders about today's virtual media briefing. The purpose of today's briefing is to provide your readers, viewers, and listeners with information and details about the urgent need to raise Pennsylvania's minimum wage. For questions on this topic, please use the blue chat icon located in the lower right-hand side of your screen to submit your name and media outlet. When you are next in the queue, you'll receive a message that reads, "The host will ask you to unmute. Please click that button." Then I will announce your name and media outlet, and you may ask your question live at that time. In the interest of time, you'll be limited to one question, but time permitting, we'll open up the call for a second round of questions on today's topic of Pennsylvania's minimum wage. You may submit any additional follow-up questions or general agency-related questions to the press resource account, and we'll address them after the call. Following the call, we'll provide participating media outlets with a link to the recording. For your awareness, this call is being recorded. If you do not consent to being recorded, please hang up now. Any reporters wishing to record this briefing may do so now. Let's get started with comments from Acting Secretary Jennifer Berrier. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I am Labor and Industry Acting Secretary Jennifer Berrier, and I'm very pleased to have with me Representative Scott Conklin and a Center County Pastor, Pastor Craig Rose. We are here again today to highlight the urgent need to raise Pennsylvania's minimum wage and pay every worker a decent wage. And we especially want to note the effect an increase in the minimum wage would have on rural Pennsylvanians. Governor Tom Wolf is proposing to increase the minimum wage to $12 an hour with a clear pathway to $15 an hour. The highest percentage of workers who would get this raise with a minimum of $15 minimum wage are in 29 rural counties. Even though many workers in rural areas are providing essential services, their wages have remained stagnant. And that's despite costs continuing to increase. While some aspects of living in certain rural areas do cost less, many necessities do not. Necessities like utilities, healthcare, and household goods. Each year that we wait to pass a minimum wage increase is a year that the income gap between rural and urban workers continues to grow. Governor Wolf wants to help thousands of essential workers struggling to buy food and avoid homelessness because of poverty wages. Pastor Rose will speak to how many of these people, including poor and working class people from the State College area, who are negatively impacted by making subpar wages. We all know these workers and depend on them daily, especially during this pandemic. In many cases, hazard pay and bonuses ended in the summer of 2020. Yet these workers have continued to work throughout the pandemic, keeping our economy going in hard jobs with poverty wages. They are struggling, and these hardworking people deserve better. They deserve a decent wage. Governor Tom Wolf, as I said previously, is proposing a $12 minimum wage with a pathway to $15 by 2027, boosting the incomes of more than 1.1 million Pennsylvania workers. In 2021, 20 states have increased their minimum wage. And many of these states, like South Dakota, Montana, and Arkansas, have very large rural populations. These states decided to increase their minimum wage because $7.25 was too little to live on, even in their rural communities. In Pennsylvania, one fair wage of $15 an hour would directly benefit 64% of restaurant workers, 38% of retail workers, 26% of agriculture, fishing, forestry, and mining workers, and 18% of healthcare and social assistance workers. We cannot let this crisis continue. We need to raise our minimum wage now and allow hardworking Pennsylvanians in communities of all sizes the dignity of providing for themselves. Increasing the minimum wage is the best poverty fighting tool that Pennsylvania has. And increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour would directly benefit 71% of families at or below the federal poverty line. Hardworking people, especially frontline workers, should not have to struggle with poverty wages. The very workers we rely on each and every day are worth more than $7.25 an hour. It's time to give every hardworking Pennsylvanian a wage of at least $12 an hour. And at this time, I will now turn things over to Representative Conklin. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Secretary. You said it quite well. For myself, in being a state legislator, we have the opportunity to have that hands-on because we're in the district every day. We're seeing our community. And I'd like to relay some of the stories that I've run into over the years that I've been elected. First off, every year we try to help out the food bank. My wife and I like to make sure that those folks who have the least are at least able to feed themselves. So we work hand in glove with YMCA, the Mel Curtis. And I think the story that brought it home the most is that when we were at the State College Food Bank and we were there helping them out, I think we were giving out turkeys that day to the food bank to give away. But one of the ladies, after we were done, I was leaving and she walked up to me and she said, "You weren't going to say anything that I was here, are you?" And I said, "No, why would I say anything?" She goes, "Well, you were at the Phillipsburg Food Bank a few days ago, and I was there, and I'm at the State College Food Bank." And I said, oh my word. I said, "I'm so sorry." I said, we're here to help you. And her fear is that she was working a full-time job. She had 2 children. She was making minimum wage, and she couldn't feed her children. And she was using both food banks, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Think about that. She's working a full-time job, trying to raise her children and still have to go to the food bank. Another story is I was talking to those individuals who take care of our adult houses in State College, those individuals who are able to live on their own in assisted living, but not able to live completely on their own. The one gentleman who was living there in the assisted care living put it the best. He had just received a job making $16 an hour in one of the local establishments. The individual that was taking care of him was making approximately $6 less an hour than what he was. And this individual, again, was a single mother trying to make ends meet. These stories go on and on. This isn't about a handout. This isn't about giving or taking. It's about making sure that individuals who work hard, put in a hard day's work, have families to raise, bills to pay, can actually afford to pay those bills, can actually afford to feed their family, and not have the need to go to the local food bank or not have the need to go to the assistant's office just to get a supplement so they can still survive. This is what the minimum wage does. It's more than just about $12 an hour, $15 an hour. It's about individuals who are doing the best they can, not complaining. They aren't on the street complaining. They're just trying to make ends meet and do the best they can. And with that, it's an honor to give somebody who has been working more diligently than I think anybody I've ever met with helping out people within Center County. Pastor Rose, please, if you could join in now.
Good morning. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Madam Secretary, for this opportunity to speak today. Speak in support of raising the minimum wage and hopefully a path to 15. And also, I think there's enormous potential in repealing preemption, where each locality could raise their own minimum wage. Again, my name is Pastor Craig Rose. I'm a pastor in Howard, a little town about a half hour north of State College, about 800 people right on the Bald Eagle State Park there. G.T. Thompson's hometown there. Wonderful people there. We've, since COVID happened, our church, like many churches, has kind of mobilized to help out many families in the area. And for this whole COVID thing, we've been doing through the Center County YMCA anti-hunger program you mentioned with Mel Curtis. We've been feeding about 100 to 150 families once a week for over a year now, sometimes twice a week. And I got to give credit to G.T. Thompson, was instrumental in getting this thing going. And in our church, a woman named Patty Long is by far the organizer and the head worker and all that stuff. I'm just a worker being all that. I got a delicate pastor hand, so I don't do the work there, but I just help out. And I just got to say before I get going, these are my observations. This isn't, I don't speak for the United Methodist Church or anything like that. But during all of these food distributions weekly, as you get to know the families, there's so many young families in there needing food, and my impression is so many of them were struggling long before the pandemic hit. They were hurting, but there wasn't as many opportunities for resources as they wanted or needed. Many of them did keep working through all this. Some lost their jobs and some kept working, but they still were struggling so much to feed themselves, to feed their children in America. You know, what exactly is behind all that? I don't know exactly, but I do have a personal story. I have a nephew who, he's in his mid-20s. He grew up out in Western PA near Grove City. And he struggled in school. He dropped out of high school and he got a job at the local fast food restaurant. And then he got stuck for many years, making a minimal income. And he couldn't break out of that cycle because he had to work long hours at a minimal wage just to get by. He couldn't afford a car, which would have broadened his opportunities to look for other work. He couldn't take the time off to go take classes and things. And so he was stuck for quite a few years, just surviving. And luckily, though, our family was able to help him out and move and get a little bit better paying job at an entry level at a factory. And just making a little bit more money made all the difference in the world. He was able to get a car, which broadened his opportunities to look for work. He was able to start taking some classes and get his GED. And now he's interviewing soon for his dream job of being an IT support worker in a factory. All because he was making a little bit more money. I really think that opened the doors for him. A lot of people don't have a family who can help them out like that. And I think raising the minimum wage to 12 or maybe a path to 15 or repealing preemption would be a wonderful way to get people to help them have those doors open up for them and help them out a little bit to succeed, to realize the dreams they all have. Everybody wants to do better, but they don't have the opportunities. I got to say, just to wrap up here, again, this is my impression, but from all the food banks, that if you look at the historical, the food banks have been feeding record numbers before the pandemic. For years, it's been record numbers every year. It's just getting worse and worse. And you can kind of look at the pandemic as sort of an accelerator of trends that we saw them earlier, but we will see them down the road if things don't change. And my impression of all the churches who work so hard and of all the food banks is we're tired. We're meant to be a Band-Aid. We're not meant to sustain people. And it doesn't really work. It just covers up the problem. And so we need a structural change, like raising the minimum wage. And that's all I've got to share. Thank you for your time again.
Pastor Rose, thank you so much for those comments. Our call today is focused on providing information and details regarding raising Pennsylvania's minimum wage. If you have questions, please submit your name and media outlet in the chat box. I will then send a message asking you to unmute your audio, and you'll be able to ask your question live at that time. Let's pause here for just a moment and see if we have any reporters who have questions for our guest today. Again, we've entered the Q&A portion of today's call, so if anyone has any questions for Secretary Berrier or Representative Conklin or Pastor Rose, please put your name as well as your media outlet in the chat box. If not, we will wrap up today's call, and you can email any additional questions to us in the communications office. We'll pause here again for a moment. Okay, it looks like the three of you thoroughly covered this today and no one has any questions for us. So I'm going to give Secretary Berrier a chance to make any closing comments or leave our reporters today with any parting thoughts.
Thank you, Teresa. Representative Conklin, Pastor Rose, I think you hit on a very important topic, the stress on some of these services that supplement individuals who are trying to put food on their table. And a cause for that is because of the subpar wages that they're earning. And I think it just highlights more than ever that now is the time to raise the minimum wage. It's been far too long. Let's show essential workers. Let's show all hardworking Pennsylvanians that they matter and give them the dignity of earning a fair wage. Let's raise the minimum wage now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. And that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests, Representative Scott Conklin and Pastor Craig Rose, for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, please email our communications office. Thank you and stay well.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.